Hi everyone. Today's video we're going to be looking at lithium batteries and series setups. In one of our previous videos we had showcased our 145 HPX, which is our 24 volt battery, and there were some questions we had received via email asking us what is the advantage of going with a 24 volt battery versus just getting two batteries and putting them in series. So what we're going to do today is maybe explore some of the challenges that you can have when you are working with batteries in series, specifically lithium batteries in series. So to sort of start off, sort of exploring what challenges we are going to be encountering, we'll sort of tell you what our setup is for this, sort of demonstration. We have two 300 HP batteries. These are both natively 12 volt batteries, and we've wired them in series. So what that does, it keeps the amp hours the same, but it doubles the voltage. So what we have here is a 24 volt 300 amp hour battery. Okay, if you were running them in 12 volts and you had wired them properly, you wouldn't have wired them this way. But if you had wired them in parallel, this would be a 12 volt 600 amp hour. So paralleling increases the amp hour. Series increases the voltage. Okay, let's go over our setup. Like we said, we've got two 300 HP batteries. They both have data ports. We are using the Victron Multiplus 2 24 volt 3000 VA inverter. They are connected to a Venus OS running on Raspberry Pi, and this is an enclosed system, so the monitor and Raspberry Pi are sort of all in one device. We have our MK3 USB, which basically connects to the Multiplus, allowing us to get data from the Multiplus. And we also have a system running where we can see our batteries and see what's going on. Now, we had already individually charged these batteries, so they are basically at essentially a perfect balance. But, what we're going to basically see is what sort of happens as things sort of go. Okay, let's also talk about how we have the inverter set up. Okay, so in our inverter, what we have is, if we go to the inverter and we go to our virtual battery, okay, we have our virtual battery set up as a series battery, 24 in series. So if you look here, it gives us the option to do two in parallel or two in series, and we have chosen two in series. Okay, so if we go back to our main thing, you'll see each individually battery is a 12 volt battery, but the virtual battery is 26 volts. So what it's doing, it's essentially combining both these batteries as a 26 volt single or 24 volt single battery. So the Victron thinks a native 24 volt battery is connected. So Victron is fairly happy. It's like, great, sounds good to me, I'll run happily. But in reality, what we really have is we have two 12 volt 12 volt batteries. Okay, so we have our sort of trusty heater, and we're going to turn it on and sort of draw some power to it. Okay, and what we'll see is that we are drawing power. Okay, now notice it's drawing 63 or so amps total. So that is being done. But even though each battery is drawing 63 amps individually, combined, it's drawing that at 26 volts versus each battery itself is experiencing 62 amps at 13 or so volts. Okay, so this is going to start lowering the state of charge of the battery, and then we're going to charge it. Okay, now I will tell you the first major hurdle that people will experience with the series setups. Okay, What eventually can happen is these two batteries don't necessarily discharge evenly. They might be some slight variation. Okay? So if we actually go in and see one of the batteries, we're drawing 5.4 amp, 63.4 amps from one battery, and we'll be drawing 63.93 or slightly different. Now, they're close, but they're not necessarily perfect. And even though we've got a slight difference, what will eventually happen is one battery will become slightly lower than the other. Now, I wouldn't be able to show that to you today because they're already, like I said, we had perfectly charged them. So what we have done is we've attached sort of a little heater, okay, to just one battery, not the other. And what we're going to basically do is simulate what would happen over the course of, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 or so cycles, where because of the way the wires are connected, nothing can ever be perfect. One battery may be experiencing slightly higher draw than the other. So we have our main heater running off the inverter. Now we're going to turn on the heater only on one thing. So now what you're going to see is there a bit of a kerfuffle happening. One battery is having close to 90 or so amps being drawn. The other battery is having 62 or so amps being drawn. So that is eventually going to cause an imbalance. And if we can see here, we can see 327 is approximately drawing 30 amps more than the other battery. Okay? So that is eventually going to cause a bit of an issue on how this is set up and what we like to say, imbalance these two batteries. So let's run this for a little bit and get that imbalance sort of high. And then what we'll do is we'll charge these batteries back up and see what happens. So essentially what we're going to be doing is that nice even setup that we had that had both at 100 and both at 99. We're going to basically mess that up to where maybe one is 97 or 98 and the other one's down to 90%. In other words, we have caused an imbalance. And then what we'll show you what happens is as you charge the battery, that once one battery reaches full, the other one is not going to be able to catch up. And we'll see what we have to do when that happens. So we'll let this run for a little bit and then we'll see where we are. Alright, so we ran the little heater for, I don't know, I would say about 20 minutes or so. And we've now caused an imbalance. So because we're going to be screwing around, we temporarily turned the inverter off. But I wanted to show what everything is happening. And if you look at what the Serbo is saying, or the Venus OS device is saying, it too is seeing the imbalance. One battery's at 98%, the other one's 94%. Now, you will notice when the devices are in series, the overall state of charge is based on the lowest battery. The reason we don't average this is because as soon as the lowest battery hits its cutoff, your bank is done. So we set the low voltage low state of charge based on whichever device is lower. Okay? But you'll notice even though one is 94 and the other one's 98, they're going to stay that way. They're not going to even out. If this was lead and you were running power through it, it may even out. But in this case, if we charge the device, it's going to eventually charge up and not really even out. So let's actually show you what happens when you've got an imbalance between two batteries in series and you try to run the inverter on to see if it balances the batteries. Alright, so we've supplied the system with AC power. So the Victron is now receiving AC power, and we are actually charging the batteries. So you can see both batteries are receiving amps, and we are charging the battery. But you're gonna find out that 306, it's gonna reach 100% charge first, and the other one, 327, it's not, and it's just gonna stay there until someone manually charges back up 327 or does something else so that this is even. So we'll let this run, and we'll show you what happens when they reach full power and what the problem is if you have an imbalance on lithium batteries and you have set these in series. Alright, so we're approaching full charge. As you can see, 306 is almost full, and if we go to, well, there we go, it actually stopped. So, well, now we have a problem. One of our batteries is full, the other battery is at 97%, and the charger has stopped. And there's not really anything that's going to change that aspect. And this is what most people find when they've got a slight imbalance. Now, we ran that heater for about 10-15 minutes, but this is what you can expect if you run your batteries in series over the course of a few weeks or maybe 1 or 2 months. And when that happens, it just sort of stays here. And it comes down and it'll try to run again, but eventually what will happen is the first battery will hit low voltage cutoff, it'll stop charging, and when that happens, you know, again, the second battery is not going to be able to catch up. So it's just kind of going to stay there for quite a while. And eventually, even whatever settings you have on your inverter will eventually, you'll get tired of trying to balance it and basically assume it's there. Notice how the virtual battery is still telling the inverter we're at 97%. So as far as the multiplex is concerned, I have 3% more to go. I should bring this battery up to 100. And we're not really going to get there. So let's see what we can do to address the situation and what options are available in the market to try to get this into sort of a better place. Okay? Okay, so as you can see, we're pretty much hard stuck at 97 and 100%. We actually turn the inverter off, it's not going to do anything. Now, could this have been slightly better if it was in parallel? So let's actually disconnect our batteries and our lugs and see how it would be if these were in parallel. So to do that, we're going to connect the red to the red, black to the black. Now obviously we can't have the inverter connected anymore because this is a 24 volt inverter, and if we go parallel, we'll end up with a 12 volt battery. But let's just see what would happen if these were in parallel. Right, so we've actually connected them in parallel, disconnected everything. Red to red, black to black. Let's actually see what's happening to the battery. We have some amps movement. There's no charger, no nothing. But let's look at our Venus OS. Isn't that crazy? We're having approximately 32 amps going from the higher battery going to the lower battery. And that's the magic of parallel. When you have parallel, the batteries will automatically balance each other. So you can see current is leaving 327 and going into 306. And it'll keep doing that until their voltages are basically the same. So you could say, well, if you have batteries in series and they're misbalanced, plug them together, and you could even apply voltage to it because the voltage does need to be high, and they'll eventually balance out. Now, notice as time goes by, the amps will go down. And the reason is the lower the difference between the voltages, the less it will be there. It still is not going to make up for our difference in state of charge. we're still going to have that state of charge and balance. So you could potentially do this, get some limited success, but what we're trying to demonstrate is the reason why you don't have to worry about balancing as much in parallel is the batteries will self-balance as long as the voltage is at a high enough. And as you can see, we started at 32 amps, now we're down to 16, and eventually it's going to get to 2 or 3. It's still not going to fully solve the thing. So yeah, this isn't ideal either. So is there something else that we can do? And what we're going to show you next is this device. It is called a battery equalizer. What it's going to basically do is mimic the self-balancing characteristics of a parallel battery while they're in series. So let's see what happens when we have this thing involved and what it can do. So we're going to wire these things back into series as we had earlier and kind of show you how this can play out. All right, so we connected them back into series again. We have it connected to our inverter. Let's go ahead and turn our inverter on. Okay, and we have it set to where we have AC input, so the charger should kick on. And let's sort of see. Now, probably the same thing is going to happen again, where it will turn bulk charging on, and we'll see initially it will start charging both batteries, but again 306 will charge all the way and 327 won't be there. Okay, so let's let it run for a little bit and we'll see what we get. Okay, all right, so we're approaching basically full. And as you can see, we just hit 100%, 14.2. And you heard that thumb? Stop. A little better, but still no cigar. We're still not balanced. One is 100%, the other one is 98. A little better, but clearly not there. All right, so we have these little things connected, and we have this device. Let's talk about this little device and what it can do. Let's see what happens when we connect it. So we're going to connect both sides to one each, turn this on, and let's see what this equalizer can do. All right, so the equalizer is turned on. It sees one's at 14.2, the other one's 13.8. Actually, you see it's a little higher because it's measuring the voltage over here. Let's see what happens. So we now see one battery is getting almost 7 to 8 amps going to it. So you can see 306 has disabled charging with the red button, but we're able to get, well, we were for a little while, but we are able to get some amps going into 300.27. So even though the charger has kicked on and is supplying around 57 or so amps, as soon as it hits 14.6 or so volts, it's going to stop again. But you can see that one battery is still getting, some amps going to it to help it get closer to it. So this device, equalizing device, is able to funnel power from the higher one to the lower one. And by doing that, you're able to sort of mimic the characteristic of how the batteries were behaving when they're in parallel. It's not going to be as aggressive because, as you saw, we were almost balance charging at 30 amps when they're in parallel, but it's still better than nothing because we can. However, it's not going to be the same as the voltage gets closer and closer. It's going to be sort of less and less, and it'll kind of remain that way. But better than nothing, and you just simply can attach this sort of device to your setup and sort of see how it is able to balance in series. Okay, so that is one way that you can balance your batteries when in series, is with an equalizing device. Now, they work best when the batteries are near full charge because there has to be a significant voltage difference for them to work effectively. But as the voltage difference gets closer and closer to full, it will be less and less. So let's see how far we can get with this device, how far we're able to get it to load up, and see if we can get rid of this imbalance. But you can see as the voltage gets closer and closer, the amp equalization gets sort of less and less. So that is something to keep in mind. All right, so we ran this thing for, I don't know, I would say 20 minutes or so. Got a little better, but as you can see, we're still not really where we need to be, and, you know, we have that imbalance. But given long enough, running long enough, it would eventually balance these things out. This is our 10 amp balancing system. It can balance up to 4 batteries in series. So good little alternative, and it will work with any batteries, not just ours. And there's similar devices on the internet. We're not going to claim that this is something we made. This was just customized for us because we wanted quick disconnects on there. Okay? So that is one way of doing it. Okay? The other way that you could do it is you could literally just take a charger, connect it to the low battery, and charge that low battery to where it matches the other one. So let's see how that would work. All right. So we have, you know, even though we have our inverter running, it's not really doing anything. We've temporarily disconnected our equalizer, and we just added a 12-volt charger. As each of these batteries are 12 volt, we can individually charge this setup. Okay, let's see what happens. So I'm going to connect this to the one that's low, and charger is on. Oh, look at that. We're charging a single battery and bringing its voltage up. And connected long enough, it will bring this battery to where it's close to this and allow us to correct the imbalance in a series setup. Probably not the most optimal, and no one's going to enjoy doing this, but it is one way to do it. And we can see in our app, the app is also will detect that 327 is being charged while the other one is at idle. So this is one way that you can do it. It's probably going to be the most common way for people using these in series, just to get one of these single 12-volt charger, and you can charge it up and bring your system back up to balance. But let's face it, we went to electric to get away from the same kind of maintenance we had to do with generators and stuff like that. If this is what you're having to do, what exactly did you accomplish? Instead of doing less maintenance, now we have to maintain electric battery setups. So is there another potential way? There is. And this is something that's exclusive to us, but I think you guys are going to like it. So we'll do that next. All right, so we disconnected the equalizer, and let's see if there is a sort of a different way to sort of assist in this. Okay. So you'll notice that we have a virtual battery setting. Okay. And if we go to the system of the virtual battery, we can sort of see what is sort of happening, and we can go to our, sort of series balance, and there's a setting called enable series balance. Okay. If we set this to yes, this is going to actually use the battery's built-in heating pad to help lower the battery that's high. So if I hit yes on this, okay, and you may require a restart or not depending on the Venus OS that you have, okay. So let's go ahead and see what it does, okay. It's probably still kind of close, so we'll actually see what this is doing right here. All right, so that battery is basically saying it's over volt. If it's a second. Okay, so now you'll see on this screen there is an H that is appearing. Okay, notice how we are draining almost 7 amps from one battery, and basically nothing on the other battery. Okay, so what that is basically doing is lowering the power of the battery that is high and basically allowing the other battery to catch up. So isn't this a little crazy? One battery has power going out of it, but the other battery has power going into it. Pretty nuts, don't you think? And yeah, it is. Now, there is one downside to this approach of balancing. We are warming up 306. And as we are warming up 306, it's going to sort of get hotter. So if we go to our virtual battery, we have some settings that we can do. And one of the settings that you can basically do is decide the temperature limit of how far you want it to go to. You can also set when the system will turn on, when it will turn off, and you can also decide, how much of a voltage difference between the batteries has to exist before it turns on. Okay? So this is a technique that's available on the 300 HP, the 275EX, and probably the V6 kits that we will be coming out with. And it's pretty decent. It'll provide you with a fairly decent sort of, charging mechanic. The whole idea is that the lower battery will receive amps. The higher battery will basically burn off those amps. Okay, so those amps are not going to go to the battery. Those amps are basically going to go to the heating pads and burn up, which sort of gives you this nice consistent balance. That's the one thing that's different between this one and that one. This one will sort of surge up and down, versus the heating system will give you a nice constant 7 amp draw, allowing the other one to sort of catch up. And that also, the advantage is you don't have to have anything additional. The batteries are already capable of balancing in series out of the box. Now, that leads to the other question. Could we use the SFK series balancing in conjunction with the equalizer? Yes, I believe we can. So let's see how that looks like. All right, so we've actually attached the equalizer. We've also are running the SFK series balancing system for the Victron batteries, and we're doing a combination. So that's allowed us to increase a little bit, probably not as much as without, but you can see it's a constant sort of draw. The heating will remain working on 306 until it gets too warm. So you can also see, it's a cold day today, so we're still in the 70s. It's probably, I would say, if you ran it for 30 minutes, you might get it to 100 degrees. But you should never be that far out of balance, to be quite honest. But if you were, this is one way that you can use to balance your cells. Basically, the higher battery will run its heating pads, which allows the lower battery to catch up. And if you want to, you can improve it slightly by using this as a conjunction. So the idea is this will do most of the balancing on when you're not really using anything. And to sort of top off the very top, use the built-in heating systems to do that fine tuning of the balancing to get your cells to line up. And if you have this deployed correctly, essentially there is no difference, or there really is no advantage in running a 24-volt native battery or two 12-volt batteries in series. Well, as long as you have one of our batteries in that system. If you don't, this little device will still work fairly well, and it will help keep the batteries sort of in sync. So we're going to run this for a little more and show you how it looks like when it's all perfectly evenly balanced. Alright guys, looks like we are almost done. Actually, it has actually triggered the other one to turn on. And let's look at our screen. We both are seeing 100% across the board. You can see 306 is warmer. It's 85 degrees in here, and case 1 and case 2 are are both basically essentially full, and the system just kicked on. So if you look at here, it has sort of reached full. I would probably say we'd want to lower the overall max voltage to maybe about 28.6 or 20. It's currently set to 28.8. But the heating basically has stopped because there's not that much of a differential there anymore. If we look at our little equalizer, it is, pretty nicely warmed up, and the system is also switched to absorption mode, so the charger no longer is in bulk. But we have essentially basically reached full. Now you may be saying, well, one's 14.46, the other one's 14. In reality, if you're basically 13.8 or 14, it's essentially full. So there's really not much to go after that. So in terms of that, it is, it's essentially, basically full, and you'll see the inverter turn on or off as needed to finalize it. So that last bit of 8 amps or so is basically the balancer doing the last few things to, or the battery equalizer last few things. But I would suspect that this battery should be completely balanced, probably within the next, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So we'll show you a snapshot of it fully, completely balanced. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of appreciation of, series balancing and lithium. It's not as easy as, as lead, but with the right tools, it is certainly possible. So we'll just show you it perfectly balanced. We'll let it run for a little bit. Looks like there's only a few amps left, and when that's done, it should be dead on perfectly balanced. So as you can see, the voltage is pretty much dead on. Still a little bit of amps being moved between the two batteries, but 306 is 14.38 volts, and 327 is 14.4 volts. Now the slight bit of difference that you're seeing, well, not every device has the exact same voltage reading, so it's probably going to move back and forth a little bit. But for the most part, we would consider these two batteries balanced. We both have 100% again. The system is saying 28.8 volts. So as far as Victron is concerned, battery is nice and fully balanced. So there's no reason to go any higher. Victron will, basically be there, and it's in absorption mode. So there you go. That is how you can balance series. It was a long video, but hopefully that kind of shows you the challenges that you run into when dealing with series systems. But like I said, with the correct equipment, it can sort of work. We'll just sort of look at the final temperatures. Like I said, about a 10-degree difference between the two. Now, this is saying 306 is saying it is overvolt, but like I said, as soon as we had any type of load or anything applied, we'll actually disconnect the battery from the charger. Just 1 second. So if you had the battery disconnected from the charger and you turned on like our trusty heater or anything, as soon as any load is applied, these two are basically going to be, for the most part, dead on even, and all the errors that you may see will also be going away. But at this point, these two are essentially one single 24-volt battery, and this thing alone is going to be able to probably keep them, but the series balancing for the heating will add that little bit of boost to help them keep in sync. Okay, so again, long video. If you have any questions, just email us. And again, this will work on anything else, but you can always give us a call. We're more than happy to help out. But whichever way you decide to go, it should work. And the Victron system is certainly helps in keeping everything in sync. Alright, thank you again. Thanks for choosing Sun Fun Kits.